Welcome back to the Mentor Roulette grind. This time we are playing Bard on a Monday evening, and this set was rather specific in a weird way. Not much to say beyond that. With that said, for DD1 we have Beneath a Trash Bag. You know, it is kinda dire when, as a Bard, you look at Venomous Bite and go, is it even worth it to put this up over just heavy shotting? Especially when Venomous Bite just needs 12 seconds to catch up. Genuinely, I wasn't sure if it was going to last that long. Fortunately, it lasted a whole 20 seconds, so it was worth it, I guess. Imagine if your raid buffs lasted the entire fight. For Duty 2, we go to a Dawntrail raid boss, timestamp to skip if you like. With that said, we went to M2N, Honey Bee Lovely. And for my own personal mistakes, there was this one point where I dropped my dots, but aside from that, I think I did decently well. Things go super nicely as we progress through with no major incidents, and then suddenly one of our tanks decides to run off to Narnia with their stack marker, presumably to invuln it, although that is not how that mechanic works. To clarify, the way this stack marker works is that it gives 4 hearts for the heart meters everyone has. These are spread evenly between players in the stack, so 2 players in it means each gets 2. 4 players, everyone gets 1. If you have 3 players, the excess heart goes to the stack marker holder, and of course, if you're alone, you get all 4 and immediately get the Simpy debuff and can't move for a while. I believe it would also hurt, of course, but there is just no need to solo the stack. These beat stack markers also work the same way in the Savage version, by the way. Leading into the hard bullet hell that follows, several players die, which culminates in me taking a tank buster. And as we salute as I say my final goodbyes, I survive, thanks to Hollis and Troubadour damage reduction on top of a parry and a bit of shield. It is just that easy. Anyway, it took quite a bit before I saw any healing, but then again, all avoidable damage of course. It is just alarm pheromones, right guys? So anyway, we make it through. For Duty 3, we went back to E8N, Refulgence. Weird. Anyway, I finally understood the blades forward or backward combined with mirror mirror. For those mechanics, mirrors copy the logical solution to the mechanic, which makes almost no sense, but hear me out. If she cleaves all but the back of her, then the mirrors will cleave all but the back end of the room. If she cleaves behind her, then the mirrors will cleave all but the front end of the room. This, I guess, makes a lot more sense when we remember that technically Shiva here could be facing any direction, so the mirrors sort of replicate the general idea of the mechanic, which incidentally would mean if Shiva is facing north, the mirrors will overlap their safe spots with hers, which makes it shockingly easy and convenient to dodge. We also of course get a second look at Light Rampant again, where you can see 2 players get spread markers, 4 players needed for the soaks, 2 players get spread markers, 4 players needed for the soaks, 2 players get spread markers, 4 players needed for the soaks. Simple and easy. I also ended up wasting LB3 at the end since no one else wanted it and I was too late on the trigger. For Duty 4, we had another Dawntrail raid, timestamp to skip if you like. With that, we went to M4N, Wicked Thunder. But takes a lot of my focus to actually just do decently well with, which led to me getting a bit confused on the cannon mechanic, and it certainly didn't help that I misclicked Repelling Shot at the worst of times. I've since moved that keybind as a result. However, this is also an excellent opportunity to talk about how painful it can be for some jobs to die at the wrong time. Not that you often die at the right time, I suppose. I died right in the middle of the 2-minute burst, which meant that when I got back up, I had no song and had to simply wait for Mage's Ballad. Simultaneously, I had to choose between completely destroying all future 2-minute bursts by using my cooldowns anyway, or hold them and have an even sadder filler sequence. The only saving grace here is that I wasn't dead during the time in my song sequence where I had to press the next song, as that could have been even more devastating. Anyway, I don't recommend dying. No fun. Also compared to other jobs, I think Bard is one of the most devastated by random deaths due to how many sensitive timers the job just has. Aside from my grave mistake here though, we sort of made it through just fine. For Duty 5, we went to Rathalos Extreme, and this was one of those groups where clearly everyone understood the assignment. Everyone soloed their stacks, the tank was ready with TPN whenever possible, the healer used Ashuna aggressively, so much so that it didn't help much when I used Warden's PN, as the healer was already casting Ashuna anyway. However, despite this, we had some disagreements, I think, on what to attack, as the tail survived with a sliver of health after the first down, which then, similar to a previous run, significantly extended the fight. Ultimately, we had one death when the summoner got hit and stunned, and then was comboed by the follow-up. We also had an exceptionally fast, in my opinion, ad phase while we're at it. The only thing I could really ask to change would be that we focused the tail a bit harder, I suppose. For duty 6, we went to E4N, Titan. And wow, this is a super nostalgic fight for me, just in general. While I got into the game in Stormblood, this was the first time I got around to doing the normal raid on release day. And I recall not only sort of having to respect the tank buster, quote-unquote, demanding a tank switch, but we also had multiple wipes, and you almost certainly already guessed what was causing the wipes, so let's talk about that one in particular. The most troublesome mechanic in the Eden Titan fight is the arm slams and the ATV. They each require that you respond slightly differently, but the simple process is that when he jumps somewhere to start the mechanic, you always go to him. If he morphs his hands, always first go in front of him. If he morphs the ATV, go to the side of him that is closer to the middle. The first hit of the arms essentially kills you one way or another if you're not immediately in front of him, and then kills you if you stay in front of him. If he reaches morphing his arms more than once in the fight, the subsequent slams will slam one side and then explode the other a few times. So ultimately, staying near him and reacting to which side he will slam is the solution. For the ATV, he will dash across the arena, pushing you back, and if you're not up next to him on the side closer to the middle, you will probably die. On subsequent uses of the ATV, he will move slightly and dash across from the other side, repeatedly, so you have to keep getting into position until he stops. Overall, it is not such a difficult mechanic, but it is exceptionally punishing, and if you've done this fight but always die early in this mechanic, it can be really hard to actually learn it. Case in point, one of our healers had a really bad time. For 2d7, we have yet another Dawntrail raid, timestamp to skip. With that, we went to M3N, Brood Bomber. I really feel like this fight is a lot easier to position for as a ranged compared to a melee. Especially, obviously, as a physical ranged. Every lariat becomes entirely about moving to the side instead of coordinating keeping up your GCD. Of course, later in the fight, where AoEs appear during it and more, it still isn't entirely trivial. Overall, I also felt my rotation went super well in general, although there was this time where I started a burst and, for whatever reason, had less than 80 soul voice and still absent-mindedly pressed Apex arrow, wasting it. Rather close to the end, we also had 3 player deaths back to back as a result of 3 mechanics one after the other. Which, with a single healer somewhat low on MP, is quite concerning, yes, but did not lead to a wipe. As a result of things like that, I also got a lot of mileage out of my troubadours and Nature's Min. Let's just say I'm glad I was playing a job that offered utility. For duty 8, we went to Urth's Fount, Odin. A key mechanic I'm playing around in this run is the AoE attack speed slows he applies. As they're centered on random players, by standing spread out from the group whenever I don't need any healing, there's a better chance as few players as possible get slowed. I also used Warden's PN on a healer whenever they got slowed and I didn't, and on myself otherwise. Mainly because by the time I got hit by it, I had concluded that the healers were not exactly in the business of casting Ashuna much, so very low chance they would use the help to help me. Usually in these fights, at least 1, if not 2 players end up dying, and they often get overwhelmed right as the DPS check at the end happens. But not this time, not a single death. Bard also has one of the more interesting rotations at this level, although the 30 seconds of no song is really something. For the part where Odin puts out 3 spears that need to be killed, I actively spread Windbite and not Venomous Bite, simply because Windbite has the greater total potency, and by the time I had spread that one to all 3, some of the spears were so low that I saw no reason in applying Venomous Bite anymore. That is just how it is sometimes when multi-dotting. A pretty solid group, I would say. For duty 9, we have a Dawntrail Expert Roulette duty, timestamp if you want to skip. That said, we have Ghost Park. Given I don't have that much recent experience with managing bard songs in dungeon runs, I feel I did really well with rotating the songs throughout the entire dungeon. For the most part, my songs didn't drop and I had my burst properly aligning with Wanderer's Minuet every time. For the first boss, just before the chase, I place myself far out to the edge as this causes the children on the opposite end to target me specifically, making their movement slightly more predictable for the rest of the team. I try to do this for every rush whenever I can. To clarify this mechanic, the first time the children dash across, they target relatively consistently the player that is the furthest away. Once they reach the other side and ready for the run back, they target the closest player. So there it is a bit more dangerous to stand all the way out to the edge, but you can still bait just the same. For the most part it went well, but if anyone was keeping a "day since Kai got benoggined" counter, you can set it back down to 0. On the second boss, I was trying my best to guide the group on the cops, but I don't know what to tell you. I'm still not sure on the third and beyond cops despite seeing so many when I soloed this on Warrior. But hey, we totally nailed it. We were absolutely just ignoring the mechanic, not moving into the wrong spot. We totally knew the mechanic wouldn't resolve, guys. Definitely. Definitely. I'd say a pretty solid Ghost Park run overall though. And finally for Duty 10, we have Stately Triforce, and well, while it is an interesting guild test, as usual, the mobs pose no threat whatsoever, and we sort of just work our way through it. Although, why does Cryer's Longbeard not have a beard? Is it an inherited name, or what's the deal here? That is just silly. Aside from that weirdness, the rest of the guild test goes as expected, with no major issues at all, of course. After M3N, I was really hoping we'd get a full house in terms of current raid bosses. That would have been funny. Or if we had gotten E12N, that could have been entertaining too. But the simple fact we had this many raids is quite wild. From all the Mentor Roulettes I've done, I've started to reach a point where whenever I click yes to the Mentor Roulette and see a 4-man group, I expect a kill test. Whenever I see an 8-man group, I'm preparing myself mentally for an extreme. But as you can see, it is much more likely it is just the current raid tier. At least on Mondays for some reason. I'm pretty satisfied with my performance with Bard, considering it tends to be my worst performing job, because I normally tend to forget to maintain my songs, or I forget my dots, but throughout this set, I think my dots only dropped like twice accidentally, so that is pretty good. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, before Shadowbringers, Troubadour's effect was a bit more complex. In Mage's Ballad, it increased max HP, in Army's Paeon, it reduced physical damage taken, and in Wanderer's Minuet, it reduced magic damage taken. It also lasted a lot longer, but then again, the fact you sort of needed to be in a specific song at a specific time in your rotation would make it pretty hard to align Troubadour with the mechanic you needed a specific effect for, right? Understandably, it was changed to how it works today in Shadowbringers.